Welcome back, everybody, to another edition of the Coach's Corner. I'm your host, Dan Federico, back again, this time with men's basketball coach and assistant AD, James Mooney. Coach, how you doing?
Good. How you doing?
Good, man. Just trying to get through this quarantine, as I say every week. I know I keep saying that. How's your quarantine been, and how you been getting through it?
I mean, having a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old all day, every day is beyond challenging. And, constantly need either my wife's or my attention. So even when, I put them on their iPads or put the TV on, they still want me to see what they're doing. They still want me to look at whatever they're looking at. So at first it was really, really difficult to adjust, but now I've kind of gotten into the routine of things. But it's still like, I don't have a 9 to 5 schedule. It's whatever pocket I could find some room to work. That's how I operate.
Yeah, I feel like, a lot of people are adjusting the same way. It's different for everybody. Like you said, with kids, I obviously don't got to deal with that. But I'm sure it's been tough. But speaking of that adjustment, I'm sure you've been in touch with your players. How have they been adjusting to this? I mean, some people live out of state. They had to fly home, doing classes online, trying to train for the season at home. How have you been on top of them with the situation?
Well, I mean, school was the first thing that I was more focused on than anything. When we went to virtual learning and now everyone's at home, we couldn't be as hands-on as we normally are, especially with those that needed help and tutoring and stuff like that. But speaking to all of them, I mean, to each his own. For the most part, the consensus was that, they didn't like it. They'd rather be on campus and be in a classroom.
Of course.
They just didn't like the virtual learning. They didn't like, I guess, being away from their friends and stuff like that. But what I can say is that they responded to adversity above and beyond what we wanted and what we asked of them. We had our highest GPA for the spring semester of any semester we've had since I took over, which was a 3.11.
Wow, congratulations.
And then for the year, we finished with 3.0 exactly. So, all credit goes to the team for doing that. But really also to Coach Mike, our assistant. He oversees academics. He was completely in charge of it. And, I can't say enough about what he's been able to do for us as a whole, but, to make sure that our guys did what they needed to do school-wise was great. But working out and stuff, I mean, rims have been taken down, in parks. So they don't have access to any basket or gym. So a lot of them have just been kind of running, working out at home, running around the neighborhood, doing the best they can to stay in shape. Now, a lot of them are working, talking to them and recruits. We have guys working at Amazon. We have guys working at like Stop and Shop and stuff like that. So, or Instacart, guys are staying busy and making money, which is great.
Yeah, it's good that they're staying on top of things. But look, the coronavirus stuff could be depressing for some people. A lot of people, it's been a tough adjustment. So let's now get back to your background in the game. What were your upbringings like with the sport of basketball? Was it always your first love? And kind of walk us through, your childhood up until high school, what your experiences in the game were like.
Yeah, I mean, I can't recall when, where, or how basketball was introduced to me. But I know as far back as I can remember, basketball's always been in my hand. It's always been a passion of mine. Fortunately for me, I grew up when Jordan was in his prime, during the whole 90s era. I was able to watch that and seeing him play every day, how he was able to dominate on the court. That only further, cemented my love for basketball. It really did. So growing up, that's all I did. But I did play baseball as well. And believe it or not, as much as basketball is a part of my life and always has been, I really did look forward to playing baseball every spring.
Mm-hmm.
I really and truly did. I don't want to say it was a break from basketball because I still played. I still, whenever I could, played basketball. But in nice weather during the spring and summer, I played wiffle ball or Little League. That was like my first priority. I really wanted to do that. But I still played, which I think, again, was just a good, healthy balance for me growing up. In grammar school, I was always the captain, always a starter. always the star player or one of the star players. And it wasn't until high school where it was a major adjustment for me. That's where it was not the same. I was not the star player. Certain years I barely played. For the most part, I was a role player that came off the bench. So playing in high school was really, really difficult and challenging, and it really made me question my love for basketball, truthfully, because, we were winning, we were competing, but I wasn't necessarily an integral part to it. So it was really hard to accept. Me and several of the coaches, we butted heads a lot. So, to a large part, though, it's what really, I think, turned the corner for me in my career. Really gave me an edge. It really put a chip on my shoulder so that when I came to college, it was like a fresh start, and I was ready to just go. There was no, anything. It was, here's James Mooney coming into College of Mount St. Vincent. He didn't really play at Iona Prep. Let's see what he has. But I had every intention of, turning heads and just doing what I needed to do.
So to kind of, you kind of jumped on my next question here. The reason I cut you off for the high school is because for people who don't know, I'm sure a lot of you do, Coach Mooney was a 4-year starter at College of Mount St. Vincent, graduated in 2006, all-time leading point scorer. You're on so many, records, and, you're on top of a bunch of lists. You're on so many more, maybe not number one, but on there somewhere. Like you said, you came in as a role player, and you obviously grew into something that was a lot bigger than just that. So kind of speak on your experience at the College of Mount St. Vincent, both, as a student, as a player, kind of take us through your whole journey with the school.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a very honest and transparent guy, which can sometimes get me in trouble. But, my experience at Mount St. Vincent wasn't the best, truthfully, as a player. I'm very open with my team and speaking to my experience, especially recruits. Is I had 3 coaches in 4 years. That's no fault to anyone. That's just kind of what it is. I mean, some of our students, in certain sports are experiencing that now too. So I could certainly relate to that. And I've actually spoken to a lot of them about it. But it was really hard to kind of find my, rhythm. Like there was always a new coach every other year or so. So, as an individual, playing wise, yeah, I had a great career, but grammar school and high school, I was winning. More importantly, that's what I wanted to do. And I had a losing record all 4 years, which was really, really difficult and a tough pill to swallow. I was not used to that whatsoever. In high school, we filmed our games. We watched film. We didn't do any of that at Mount St. Vincent, which was eye-opening to me because it's kind of like, well, we're at the college level now. Like, I would expect the scouting reports to be more detailed, the film sessions to be more specific and stuff like that. And we didn't even record our games. So, like, me personally, I would love to go back and see my 40-point games, kind of reminisce, but I can't. I don't have anything. It drives me nuts. And when some of my guys are talking trash, I can't give them anything to say, like, yeah, you better watch your mouth because this is what I was capable of. But, as a student, it was great. I have friends, lifelong friends that I made there. I met my wife there, but overall, what I appreciate is being able to come back to Mount St. Vincent. And despite me not having the best type of experience as an athlete, I could now kind of give a better experience to those that I coach now. My whole 4 years, we didn't have a single overnight trip, not one. And that was really, really disappointing too, because that's what you look forward to as an athlete. Like at Iona, we went to San Diego, we went to Virginia.
Really?
And the furthest I think we ever traveled was LaSalle College in Massachusetts. And it was a 1-day back and forth trip. This year we went to California. So we've done so many, and we continue to want to do that. So that's why I just love how it's come full circle that I'm now in the driver's seat to prevent any type of negative experience at all, for our current players.
So now before we talk about you coming back to Mount St. Vincent, let's go a little bit after, your playing days finished. We know that you played professionally overseas. You obviously had an illustrious career at the College of Mount St. Vincent, but Were you always thinking of being a coach? Was that always something that was on your mind, or did that kind of just happen out of the blue?
No, you know, being a coach, it was, it wasn't a thought. If anything, I wanted to be a trainer and a player developer. I really loved being hands-on and working with guys with their shot, with their ball handling, with whatever aspect of the game. I felt and still feel I'm very, very well equipped and knowledgeable to do that. I could articulate it. I could relate to it. I could speak to it. I know a lot of the nuances of the game, and the coaching side of things. You're not necessarily dialed in on that. You're more, what are we doing offensively? What are we doing defensively? You're standing on the sideline, with your hands tied, because there's only so much you could do during the course of a game. You can't control anything really. It's all up to your players at that point. So it just wasn't something I aspired to. When I came back from Switzerland, which was at that time I knew it was the end of my playing career. I was fortunate enough to hop on the staff at Iona Prep as a volunteer, and that's kind of when the hook really sunk in. Was I really loved it. I loved the preparation to everything. I loved, how every day there was a practice plan, a well thought out practice plan, games, watching film, creating scouting reports, strategy around that. It was a totally different challenge as a basketball guy. As a player, you just played. You thought the game out, right? But you did what your coach told you. You ran whatever offense he wanted to. You followed whatever defensive scheme he wanted to do for that player or that team. Now I'm the guy assisting with that. So that was awesome. And then, fast forwarding, I was able to become a head coach for various different teams, skill levels, age groups at House of Sports, where now I was the head coach, making decisions and, following through on them, and not having anyone to assist me in what I wanted to do with each team that I coached. So it just was a great mental aspect for me, to really start learning the game from the sidelines, not on the court playing. So through Iona Prep, being an assistant coach there for a couple of years, then at House of Sports, coaching all the different teams that I did while I was there, and then going to Rye Neck, that's where really just kept feeding the enthusiasm that I had towards coaching.
So now talking about your enthusiasm and all the good side about coaching, but at the same time thinking about, some of the negative experiences you had at the College of Mount St. Vincent, when the opportunity arose for you to potentially come back, did you see it as something, of a reclamation project, or, was it just the first opportunity that came about at the college level? Or, did you feel passionate? Like explain that experience to everybody of you, going through something as a student and then trying to make a comeback at the coaching level.
Yeah, I mean, when I had graduated, I was basically completely distanced from the school and the program. I had no affiliation or attachment to it for a variety of different reasons. And I really have to credit, Brian Nigro for bringing me back. He contacted me to help and be his assistant back in 2014, 2015, if I'm not mistaken. Had that not happened, I don't know if I ever would have been considered for the position, truthfully. Now, not having that and the job was posted, I probably would have went for it anyway.
Mm.
But I still don't know if I would have been considered as much. I was back in the program, I was back at the school, and the players were having a positive experience with me as just an assistant, which was great. So I think it was, helpful in, showing what I can do, because you were able to see it as an assistant coach rather than, at Rye Neck, he was doing this, at Iona, he was doing that. No, now you see me every day at school, helping, and we had one of our best years ever. So fast forward to 2017, when the job opened up, you know, one of my former players reached out to me and, strongly urged me to apply. And that's what I did. So, I want to preface by saying, like, getting a college head coaching job is so hard.
Of course.
It is so hard. And, you could say, like, I skipped the line. I really did. I didn't go the traditional route, which was being an assistant or a player or a director of ops and going up the line. I just basically jumped right into the driver's seat, and the stars aligned. I'm a man of faith. I solely believe that God is definitely helping me out and steering me in the right direction, because I was really, really lucky to even be considered and then be chosen. So to have very minimal experience at the college level, to now be tasked to be the head coach of an entire program, it's huge. But I think what ultimately helped me was, as much as some of the other candidates were qualified, you couldn't, like, you're not outbeating me. You're not outworking me. You're not as passionate for this as I was, because you said it was like a reclamation project. I know the school in and out. I could speak to the school, what it was, what it is, and where we're going, which I'm extremely proud of. When I give recruits a tour, I'm able to say, hey, the dance studio was a pool, and this Peter J. Sharp Center was a tennis court and parking.
Yeah.
Like, the weight room was not this, so I could speak to all that, which I think helps, and it's fun to talk about it. But another coach who maybe didn't go there couldn't, so for me, stars aligned. I was very fortunate to be chosen. It was the right time, right place. And I continue to this day, thank God, every day for the opportunity. I really do. I love what I do. And I love where I am.
And that's something we all like to hear. As you know, I came back too. I kind of feel the same way, where as a student, you feel one way, but then when you come back and you see the changes and you see the people in place, see the people that care, really brings that out in me as well, even though I'm not in a coaching position, but someone working in the athletic department where I could kind of spread that knowledge too. So I definitely agree with your sentiment there. And I think it means a lot, and it shows a lot to the kids. They see our experiences and they can learn from us and see how it was and how we want it to be and how it's two totally different things. So I think it's great. But I know, and as people who know, you love talking about yourself. Let's talk about the team real quick. So you're losing Ray Keese Harris, Mamadou Mariko, Dave Collins. Ray came in 3 years and was on your all-decade team. Mamadou, he was a starter pretty much every single game this year. And Dave Collins was big in your second half. The way you guys were playing strong brand of basketball, he was a big part of that. So losing them is going to be tough. But you have Mekhi Johnson, Vinny Tavella, who have been contributors their first 3 years, now going into their senior season. Dorian and Kelvin coming up from JV, earning some valuable minutes last year, so they got that experience. Kwame transferred out, came back, probably one of the most athletic players you've ever coached. So you do have a lot of players that are coming back next year that have that in-game experience. So kind of speak on the roster, who left, who's coming back, and how you feel about that.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that losing our leading scorer and best player, Rakis, along with our two best and only true post players, Dave and Dew, are going to hurt and impossible to replace. But, I think this group of returners is extremely tight-knit. Our rising junior class of Dorian, Los, Kelvin, Chris, Jeremiah reminds me of the senior class I was fortunate to coach my first year, with Drew, Soa, Jose, and them. That the chemistry of that group, the skill level, the desire to win and be better, is extremely strong. And you couple that with our rising seniors, Mekhi, Vinny, and Q, we have a lot who have a lot of leadership qualities and experience. I think we're going to be a very dangerous team, and every coach is going to say that, each and every year, but I truly believe that, and then not to mention, we have some of our JV guys like Arun, and our incoming freshman class. It's going to be a very competitive team, 1 through 12, 13, 14, whatever we end up carrying, where I think there's so many different ways we could go offensively and defensively, and, ultimately, like I said, losing Rakis Dave and Do are big shoes to fill, but I think it'll add a different dynamic to our team. A totally different dynamic, how we play, how they play together. It'll just be different. I think it'll be really, really fun to see. I just hope we have an entire season to really, work on it and showcase it.
Of course, yeah. So before we get to that part, like we said, we know Carlos could score at the best of anybody probably in the conference when he's on. Makai and Vinny could both stretch the floor. Kwame's great on defense. So you have some staples there. But like you said, you have an incoming class of freshmen. How do you feel about them going to be complements to the kids you have now? And how do you see that roster evolving going into next year?
Yeah, I mean, I think our recruiting class has really strengthened the core of our team and really enhanced, what we didn't have and what we needed. I was really worried, honestly, going into this year, knowing that we were losing Dave and Do and really only having Vinny as our only true forward. So losing our size, that was my major focal point throughout this entire year, was recruiting bigs. And we actually added more size than we ever have. I think we have 5 players that are 6'5" and up.
Wow.
Which is huge. We've added plenty of athletic and hungry guards that have a great skill set. I think, we did a great job of retooling and adding, some necessary pieces. I wish I had a crystal ball to say how it will all fit, and obviously with everything going on, a lot of them can't do their normal workouts and stuff like that to get in shape and stay sharp and be ready for the upcoming season. But, like I always tell the recruits and returners, October 15th, when we start, or whenever the first official day will be this year, that's when we will really see who's gotten better, who hasn't, and then shape our team from there. So it's always a very, very, very challenging time to see with all the recruits, all the returners, who's what, JV, varsity, whatever the case may be. But it's also a fun time. It's me and the coaching staff have very healthy, confrontational conversations when it comes to figuring out who's what. So I look forward to it.
So you brought up Coach Mike. You touched on it a little bit here with the freshmen and JV. So I'm not sure a lot of people realize, but we do have that JV program. It may not be something that a lot of college teams use, or it's not maybe well known, but why do you think having a JV program is important, and what are your goals with this JV program?
First and foremost, we're the only team in the Skyline with a JV program, which is a huge added benefit. Some might look at it, and I've had a lot of coaches ask me, like, how is it with JV? Some view it as it could be a pain in the ass because it's basically 10, 12 additional people on top of whatever your roster is at the varsity level. But I also see a lot of Division III programs with 18 plus people on their roster, and even that's harder to manage because, let's be honest, you're not playing 18 guys. Mm-hmm. It's just not happening. So what do you do with those 6 or so or 10 guys that just don't see the floor? JV is a great substitute for that. We treat it as like a PG year. We treat it as kind of like a prep year for varsity. And I always say, like, it's not final. If you're on JV, that doesn't mean, you're always going to be on JV. It doesn't mean that you're not a varsity level player. It just means, hey, you're not ready for that level yet. And some recruits come into the situation knowing that they're JV, and some recruits go in not knowing what they are. And that's fine. We want guys coming in kind of like the way I felt, like with a chip on their shoulder, something to prove. Like, nothing's being handed to anyone. So our JV has more than done its purpose. I think we have really, really done a great job, especially Coach Mike, branding what the JV program is. They have their own 15 to 20 game schedule. They were in a conference for the first time ever these last 2 years, with post play and, playoffs, all that stuff. And since we took over the program, Coach Mike and I, we've had 6 players move up from JV to varsity. We've had, Christian Graham and Jeremiah, they were on varsity and played JV this year. They played a dual role. Dorian and Kelvin, they were JV players last year, and then they're in the rotation playing significant minutes.
Yep.
Varsity their sophomore year. So to me, it's been really a great benefit and tool for us. Again, some guys don't view it that way. They look at it as an insult, and there's only so much we can do for that. But overall, JV has been a great resource for us, really and truly. There are headaches and hurdles, don't get me wrong, but Coach Mike completely oversees it, and I allow him to, make that his own team. Obviously we have our own, like, kind of, as a program, our expectations and core values and stuff like that, but whatever he wants to do with them offensively and defensively, it's his show to run, and he's done a phenomenal job.
Awesome. Now, before we wrap this up, just one last question. So, since your time at the College of Mount St. Vincent, first year Skyline Conference semifinal appearance, you were the coach of the year as well. Going into your second season, it was a little more of a rebuild, and then last year you returned a lot of players, also had some new faces, but you guys were in it till the last game of the season. So, what are your expectations, despite not knowing maybe that we'll have a full season or what's really to come because of what's going on in the real world? What are your expectations for 2021?
It doesn't matter what year it is, what scenario we're going to have this season, whether it's a shortened season or what, it's to win a championship. It always has been, it always will. There's never going to be this rebuild year or any nonsense like that. I'm a very competitive person. Like I told you, coming to Mount St. Vincent as a player and losing every year, having losing record, literally drove me insane. And it never made me numb to it. It never made me like, oh, okay, we just lost. It literally would eat me up. And as a coach, you have to imagine, like, there are times where I want to get on the court and go ham on my guys to really drive the point. Like, I'm not a loser. You're not a loser. I'm tired of losing here, and, for me, my expectation is, like I said, to win a championship for 2020, 2021. Every year is a challenge in itself. But Coach Mike and I, we sit and we go over what we're going to do offensively, defensively. Like, we really get into the weeds of how the season is going to go, what we're going to do, without even really knowing who's going to be on varsity, who's going to be on JV. Just having a kind of a overall picture of who we're bringing in, who we're returning, and what we could be. So, like I said earlier, I hope we have a full season, but I fully understand and I'm sensitive to the fact that we may not.
Yeah.
But one way or another, whether we have a 25-game schedule or a 12-game schedule, which I think is the minimum right now, which came down from the NCAA, we're going to make it the best experience possible, and we're going to be ready one way or another. We'll have to adjust some things, but we kind of have a plan A, B, and C. Plan A is a 25-game schedule. Plan B is a conference-only schedule, and Plan C is an even shorter season. But one way or another, we're going to be ready, and I'm excited for it.
All right, so you guys heard it here, man. These guys are ready, and we're looking forward to seeing you. So, Coach, thanks again for joining me. Hope everybody's happy, healthy on your end, and I'll see you soon.
Thank you. Same to you.
All right, have a good one.